Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Great. Thank you, Stephan, for starting our evening, bringing Gaia in the room through your music. And yes, good evening, everyone, or good morning for people who are connecting from Europe, like myself and Stephan. And welcome to this talk, Gaia and the Health of Our Planet, with Dr. Stephan Harding. My name is Juliana. I work with kadooriefarm in an evolving initiative called the Kadoorie Earth Program, of which this talk is part. This will be the second talk of a series that started on Earth Day. Maybe some of you have joined us. So it was back in April, and it was with Satish Kumar, who is an inspiration for kadooriefarm, and I'm sure to many of us here. On that talk, Satish prompted us to see the earth as a living organism, Gaia. And Stephan will be leading us from that, bringing science and myth together as a way to experience reverence for life. It is a pleasure to have Stephan with us. He is a KFBG teacher. In fact, he will be teaching an online course with us again at the end of June, where he takes us on a journey through Gaia and deep ecology to deepen our connection to nature. At the end of the talk, we'll be sharing the link, the QR code with more details, if you want to know more. And to share a little bit about Stephan, I had the privilege, the honor of studying with him 10 years ago. And it's a pleasure to be working with him. He's one of the backbones of Schumacher College. Maybe some of you will have heard, a center for transformative education in England, founded around 30 years ago. And at the college, Stephan has started the Masters in Holistic Science. He's one of the founding members of the college, together with Satish Kumar. And through this 30 years, he has inspired thousands of people towards a deep ecological commitment to the planet, to really experience Gaia. And through this combination, as we'll see today, from science and story and myth. And he has a PhD from Oxford. And together with his deep love for the earth, he will be guiding us today and inspiring us as well. Stephan has also taught together with James Lovelock, who is the founder of Gaia Theory, one of the... I think we have a microphone open. Okay. So he has taught together with James Lovelock, who is the founder of Gaia Theory, and we'll be learning more about this theory also today. So I think this is probably enough. And just before I hand over to Stephan, I will just go through some practicalities for the smooth running of our talk tonight on this platform. So Stephan will be speaking for around 40 minutes, and then we'll have time for questions at the end. So I invite you all to think of your questions throughout the talk. So maybe make some notes as the talk happens. So then when the Q&A time is open, then you'll be invited to share your questions in the chat. About this platform, if you're not so familiar with Zoom, just to flag that on the right corner, top corner, you can choose gallery view if you want to have be able to see people here. So you have a view of all the little boxes, or you can also choose speaker's view to see Stephan. And we ask you to remain mute throughout the talk and the Q&A, just so we make sure that we have a good sound. But we do encourage, if you can, those of you who can, turn your camera on, at least maybe at the beginning and the end part of the Q&A. I think it really helps to bring us, in these times of Zoom, it helps to bring, to see one another, to feel that we are, persons behind the screen. So I think that would be really great if you can, but we also understand if it's not possible. And lastly, this session is being recorded. And if you have any technical problem during the talk, do just write on the chat to KFBG team and we'll help you. that's it. Thank you so much for being here. Yeah, it's great in these times of so many challenges that we all can come together for a moment of learning and inspiration. And so, yeah, thank you all for having made the time to be here. Thank you, Stephan. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Juliana. Thank you. And welcome, everybody. Lovely that we're together in a funny sort of way through the technology. So anyway, this instrument is from Venezuela, where I was born. It's called a cuatro because it has 4 strings. And we'll just open the session with a little bit more music. So just relax. We're going to take a journey into Gaia and to the health of our planet. So just relax and prepare to be open and to share and to learn. Okay, so let's see if I can master the technology. You can hear me okay, right? Is that right? Yeah. Okay, so let me share my screen. I'm going to show you a few slides, and then we'll get together and we'll talk. All right, just let me arrange a few other things. Oh, here we go. Okay, righty-ho. Right, so, I've lost you. Wait a minute. There, okay. So there's our planet, and this is what we're going to be doing. Gaia and the health of the planet. That's me, as Juliana said. All right, let's start with this word Gaia. What is it? Why is it so important? Where does it come from? Where are we going with it? Well, I think Gaia has 2 aspects today. One is a mythological aspect, as you can see, this is the myth of Gaia. And the other is a scientific aspect. The myth of Gaia aspect is really ancient. I mean, it goes back to ancient Greece in Western culture, but in Chinese culture, to Taoism, Buddhism, but the modern version, the scientific version of Gaia, is very much from the West and from my teacher and friend James Lovelock. So we're going to be looking at both of those, and we'll see how perhaps we can integrate them in some way to help us treat our planet better and to find a good way of living with our Earth. So first, let's look at the myth of Gaia in ancient Greece. So here's Hesiod, 700 BC. And the myth, he tells us, is an even more ancient myth than 7000 BC. I mean, it must be thousands and thousands of years old. And the basic idea was that there was this vast intelligence before anything existed, before there was time, before there was space, before there was matter. There was just this vast intelligence, which we can't comprehend. Maybe in Chinese culture, it's the Tao, I'm not sure. Anyway, it felt lonely, this sort of intelligence, and it wanted to see itself from different points of view. And in the end, it decided to create time, space, and matter. And the first material thing this vast intelligence called chaos created was Gaia. So that's why Hesiod said chaos was first of all, but next appeared broad-breasted Gaia, sure-standing place for all. So you can see that Gaia is our planet is the firstborn of that vast intelligence. In other words, it is that vast intelligence in a material form. Every species, every mountain, every ocean contains that deep, original, vast intelligence that wants to see itself through the very materiality of the Earth. That's the myth of Gaia, you see. Here's another Hesiod saying, if I can get the computer to work. Hang on. There we are. Gaia, the same. Look how he speaks of her. Beautiful, broad-bosomed. She's the steadfast base of all things. So the one person, one thing we can rely on. And then she gave birth, Gaia gave birth to the heavens, to the stars. And then from that, the union of the stars and Gaia herself came all the being, the gods and goddesses and the animals and the plants, etc. So that's the myth of Gaia. And in the West, this idea gradually developed during medieval times and before, certainly before the scientific revolution. into the idea that the whole universe is a great soul. And people in medieval Europe talked about the Anima Mundi. I like this kind of spiral, you know, to give us a sense of the mystery of the Anima Mundi. Anima means soul, Mundi means of the world, so the soul of the world. The same idea. The world is a great soul, it's a vast intelligence. And all the traditional cultures in the world knew this. Even our own Western culture knew it before the scientific revolution, that the world is a great soul. And for example, certain trees would be very sacred. Here's a sacred tree in England, at Oley Valley, a sacred tree in England, which holds the mysterious concentrates, the Anima Mundi. So when you spend time with such trees, you can really feel how alive they are and how alive the whole of nature is, and how full of soul nature is, how full of intelligence. And you get a sense of the deep mystery of existence itself when you're in such places. And in Hong Kong, you have a Kuan Yin statue at the very top of your mountain, which embodies the same idea. You see, she's feminine. I would regard her as a kind of Gaia figure. You can see how compassionate she is. Look, she's listening to all beings, a beautiful statue, and really helping to heal them by connecting us with nature. There's even a fish, I just noticed, there's even a fish down there, you see. That's very interesting, because the fish represents those that swim in the intelligence of nature, surrounded by the intelligence of nature. And she's pointing to the fish. She's saying, be like a fish, be like one who swims in the living soul and intelligence of nature. And then you will flower into happiness. That's my understanding. This is in China. So you see how ancient and archetypal this mythological aspect of Gaia is. It's incredibly important. And I felt this myself when I was at Oxford. When I was studying the muntjac deer for my doctorate, I would cycle past Magdalen Tower, or drive past Magdalen Tower. Magdalen Tower, Magdalene was a great disciple of the great master Jesus. And she's woman. The main point is a woman. You see, she was Gaia for me, although I didn't know it at the time. I would cycle past every time, or drive past Magdalen Tower, and this feminine influence, Gaian influence, would descend on me, although I hadn't really heard much of the name Gaia when I was at Oxford. And then I would go to my wood, Rushbed's Wood, where I would do my scientific work, but I would also feel the intense sacredness of this wood. It was an undisturbed ancient woodland full of my little deer, the muntjac deer, and I would feel the sacredness of the wood and of the deer. But of course, that's feeling of the sacredness which actually gave me the inspiration to keep going with the very hard mental and physical work required to do my doctorate. There was no room for any discussion of the soulful qualities I'd felt in my wood and with the deer in my doctorate. They're just irrelevant. Even though without those feelings, I could never finish my doctorate. And then, of course, eventually I came to Schumacher College after many years, a few years in Costa Rica, teaching in Costa Rica and being in the forest in Costa Rica. I found myself at Schumacher College. And so it's as if this quest for the soul was growing in me. And it's here that at Schumacher College that I encountered the science of Gaia. I encountered both the myth of Gaia and the science of Gaia on the very first course at the college. And that was taught by James Lovelock, who is my dear friend and teacher for many, many years. I did science with him, but also spent a lot of time learning from him in many, many ways. James Lovelock. I like to think this is his Gaia statue you see in his garden that sort of appeared and looked into him and thought, he's the scientist I'm looking for. I need a scientist who can tell Western culture that the earth is not a dead machine, but she's alive and full of soul. But I need a scientist to tell Western culture that, because Western culture only listens to science. And James Lovelock was the one who could do it. So we'll just go into a little bit of the science of Gaia now, and we'll return later to integrate the science and the myth. So this is just to show you where we are in our solar system. This is the sun, Mercury, Venus, Earth, that's where we are, and Mars in the vastness of the solar system and of space, with this one little living planet. Deeply important, deeply significant for the whole cosmos, I would say. And when Lovelock was working for NASA in the 60s, helping them to to make instruments to send to Mars on landers to see if there was life there. So basically, Lovelock got interested in detecting life on other planets. And his specific focus, and that of NASA, was on Mars. Is there life on Mars? We want to send a lander to look for life on Mars. And Lovelock was a genius at inventing instruments. So NASA hired him to develop instruments for detecting life on Mars specifically. And when he arrived at NASA, he was given the conventional view about our Earth by the other scientists there. And the conventional view in the 60s was that the Earth is a dead ball of rock. You see how different to the mythological Gaia? A dead ball of rock. And on the surface, there's this sort of thin smear of life, which has no influence on the rocks, the atmosphere, or the water of the planet. So the picture we could draw is like this. The rocks are in charge of the planet, because in the rock department, we have volcanoes, and they emit carbon dioxide to the atmosphere, which sets the temperature of the Earth. And the poor organisms, the biota, by biota, we mean the sum of all biologically alive beings, plants, animals, fungi, bacteria, and the protoctista, the 5 kingdoms of life. That's the biota. They have no influence whatsoever on the rocks. They have no influence on the atmosphere, and they have no influence on the water. That was the conventional view when Lovelock arrived at NASA. Everyone in science accepted that. It's a dead Earth, not an Earth full of soul like mythological Gaia. And soon after Lovelock arrived, these data were given to him about the atmospheres of Earth, Mars, and Venus. These data from Mars and Venus came from a telescope based on the Earth. We won't go into the technical details. But what's very important, what moved Lovelock towards Gaia, to the sense of a living Earth, was the difference between the gaseous atmospheric composition of the Earth with respect to Mars and Venus. So I'm not sure if you're scientific, but just very briefly, the scale on this side is logarithmic. So every time we go down by a factor of 10. So this emphasizes the small and de-emphasizes the large, this scale, okay? So look at the red bar is carbon dioxide. Can you see most of the atmosphere on Mars and Venus is carbon dioxide, about 99.99%, whereas on the Earth, it's very, very small, you know, very small amount of carbon dioxide, although incredibly important for the climate, of course. And on the Earth, notice how much oxygen we've got, about 21%. Whereas on Mars and Venus, very, very little oxygen. And we have so much nitrogen in our atmosphere and very little on those other 2 planets. So when Lovelock saw this, he thought to himself, goodness, but life is producing the oxygen through photosynthesis. And then one of his colleagues had told him that the oxygen level has remained at 21% in our atmosphere for about 300 million years, 21% oxygen for 300 million years. And then bing, these ideas came into his mind, and he then was able to redraw that diagram. Here's that diagram, the 2 components again, the biota, all the living beings, and the non-living rocks, atmosphere, and water. Now Lovelock, because of that insight with the atmospheres of Mars, Venus, and the Earth, Lovelock realized that the living beings have a huge influence on the atmosphere. They make our atmosphere. We wouldn't have a breathable atmosphere with 21% oxygen and so little carbon dioxide if it weren't for life. And he said, so life has huge influences, not just on the atmosphere, but on the water, on the rocks. And then they feed back to determine which of the biota can survive in the very conditions they've created for themselves. So you see, this is a feedback. There's a feedback relationship. It's not a linear straight line, it's a feedback relationship. And here we go towards the myth of Gaia now. And his insight was that when these 2 components of the Earth are coupled together through feedback, we get an emergent property, what we call in science an emergent property. You've probably heard that phrase, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. that whole that's greater than the sum of the parts is what we call an emergent property in science. You put parts together in a system. I'm using science language now, notice. You put the parts together in a system, get them to interact, and some property emerges out of all those interactions at the level of the whole that you couldn't have predicted by analyzing any of the parts in isolation. That's an emergent property. It's a very important concept in modern science. And Lovelock is saying that there's an emergent property at the level of the whole Earth, which comes about when all the living beings, the rocks and the atmosphere, interact with each other. And that is that the whole system as one great whole is able to regulate its surface temperature. So if it gets too hot, the whole system of life, rocks, atmosphere acts to reduce the temperature. If it gets too cold, the opposite. And not just temperature, but also acidity and various key aspects of the surface. So he was given the name Gaia for this scientific idea, which he initially wanted to give a scientific name to, biocybernetic universal system tendency. His friend William Golding said, no, Jim, a huge idea like that needs a big name. You see, this is the moment when the mythological Gaia comes into science. It's a very big moment because this is the biggest idea we've had in science, I would say, even bigger than, as big as Darwin and as big as Einstein and quantum theory, that our planet is a gigantic self-regulating organism. And you can't call an idea like that biocybernetic universal system tendency. And I think when this idea was born in Lovelock, he unconsciously connected himself with the mythological Gaia, who had been wanting to express herself through science. And of course, the name Gaia had to be given to this theory. And that happened through his friend, William Golding. I won't go into the story, but. And so this idea of a self-regulating emergent Earth, self-regulating emergence at the level of the Earth was called Gaia, the mythological Gaia. You see, she appears and implants herself deeply within the science. And of course, my fellow scientists hated this. They couldn't have a goddess here, forgetting that all the other planets are named after gods and goddesses, Greek gods and goddesses, you know. So that's the idea, basically. If you come and do the course, I'm not advertising, but I sort of am. If you come and do the course, we'll go into details about how this happens. We haven't got time to do how this emergent self-regulation happens. We haven't got time for that now. All we can say now is that this scientific idea is telling us what? Let's have a summary. What's it telling us? Well, it's telling us that the Earth is alive. It's not a dead ball of rock. It's not a machine. You see, I shouldn't even say it. I should be saying she. She's a great living being. I mean, it's a phenomenally revolutionary idea. I mean, think of this. You know, we have these bacteria in our guts called our microbiome, right? We all know that. And they live inside our gut and they keep us really healthy. And just try to feel the microbes in your gut right now, if you can. So here's the situation. We are like microbes in the body of Gaia. Just as the microbes live inside our larger body, so do we live inside the larger body of Gaia. The organism we live inside of is a planet. It's a planet. I mean, it's such a huge idea. It's actually quite hard to comprehend it. I've been working on it for 30 years and I keep discovering more and more about it. But it's this idea that's going to save us. Because of course, if we live inside our own body, then we're not going to damage our own body. That would be pretty stupid, wouldn't it? And Lynn Margulis, who also helped to develop Gaia theory with Lovelock and who also I worked with, she called this relationship endosymbiosis, symbiosis from within, living when one organism lives deeply inside another and they cooperate and live well together, like bacteria do, like bacteria in our guts with us. That's called a sort of endosymbiosis. And I think we need to become endosymbiotic to Gaia now in this time of crisis. And the myth of Gaia can help us. We need to have this kind of relationship. You know, the biota create the rocks, atmosphere, and water, which create the biota. We need to contemplate this kind of picture by Asha, called Hands by Asha. So, all right, how can we know if Gaia is healthy? Well, we know Gaia isn't healthy, so this won't take very long. Can we use science, in other words, the science of Gaia? to help us know whether the planet is healthy. And the answer is no, not really. Let's look at, we're going to look at two things, climate and biodiversity. Now, what we're doing here is we're taking the approach of Gaia, of the living planet, and we're using that idea, that scientific idea, but also mythological idea, to ask whether our planet is healthy or not. And the scientific concept that we're using is from James Lovelock, that life has huge impacts on the non-living environment, on the atmosphere, the rocks, and the water. Okay, that's the scientific concept we're using. And I'm glad to say that my fellow scientists have now adopted this view that life is not a passive passenger on the Earth, but it's really important. Without life, we wouldn't have a livable planet. That's a Gaian idea. Okay, so that's accepted in science, but they've rebranded it Earth System Science. So here we are. Are we going to use the system science of the Earth, Gaia, to see if the Earth is healthy? And we're going to look at climate and biodiversity, and then we'll come back to the myth. Well, this is the famous Keeling curve graph, which shows the increase of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere entirely due to human activities from the late 1950s until now. And it's really dangerous. It should really be at 280 parts per million, somewhere down here. It's just going up and up and up. These squiggles, I can explain to you later. There's a lovely Gaian reason for them, but we haven't got time to go into it. The main point is that temperature is increasing. And this is the temperature over the last 2,000 years. And you can see gradually the temperature of the northern hemisphere, average temperature change, global change, average temperature. It was going to go down towards another ice age until the Industrial Revolution, and boom, we get very rapid warming because of us. This is the famous hockey stick graph. Remember, Keeling curve, hockey stick graph. If we had a test at the end of this, that's what we'd ask you. What is the Keeling curve? What is the hockey stick graph? So just a little picture of the warming, if I can get it to work. There we go, look at that. So that's the 1.5 degree guideline, average global temperature increase, which we're supposed to keep to. And that's 2 degrees. This is the year, months of the year. And this is the temperature. Can you see it's getting, look how quickly it changes. And then we end up with wildfires, with floods, and the incredible climate disasters that are now really starting to kick in. So the Gaia helps us to understand that this is all happening because we're interfering with the feedbacks that keep the planet healthy, the feedbacks between life and the rest of the planet, the atmosphere, the rocks, and the water. So what are we doing to the life? What are we doing to the biodiversity? Well, we're destroying it. We don't even know how many species there are on the Earth. This is pretty old now, from one of E.O. Wilson's books from about the 80s. But in the 80s, we had pinned in museums and catalogued in museums about 1.4 million species. Most of them were insects. And we didn't know how many bacteria there are. I think there's many more kinds of bacteria than there are anything else. So we're pretty ignorant about what biodiversity we've got, and we're destroying it. And the biodiversity is incredibly important for regulating Gaia's climate. So I just want to share a few things about the ecology or the relationships between the living beings, between the biodiversity. So we have these food chains where we have a photosynthesizer at the bottom, then a herbivore, then something that eats the herbivore, and then something that eats the thing that eats. So this is, you could say, a primary carnivore and a secondary carnivore, or a top carnivore. And here's another, this is a terrestrial food chain, sorry. Here's an aquatic food chain. So in the ocean or in ponds, it's microorganisms normally that do the photosynthesis and capture the solar energy. They're eaten by zooplankton, eaten by crabs, eaten by sea otters. But in fact, in nature, we don't have chains, we have webs of relationship. Look at this. This is a marine food web. So there are different species, all the way down to phytoplankton and all the way up to the seabirds and different kinds of fish. And each line is a relationship between two different species, a feeding relationship. Look at that. I mean, that's complex. And we've studied some terrestrial food webs, and it's been discovered that certain kind of food webs are more stable than others. And the ones that are more stable tend to have more biodiversity, and they tend to have lots of weak interactions between species and very few strong interactions. And lots of experiments have been done to prove this. So for example, here's an old paper, but a classic paper. Here's the number of plant species in the prairie in the United States in different plots, 5, 10, 15, 25. And here's the drought resistance. A drought comes along, and we know which of the biodiversity situations is better able to resist the drought. And the answer is, of course, the situation with more species, the better drought resistance, and therefore the better carbon capture, etc. The better it is for the climate, not just for that local ecosystem. A much bigger experiment was the Biodef experiment, Biodef in Europe, using these various countries. And what they did here was they looked at how much hay, in other words, how much carbon was captured by different numbers of plant species in flowering meadows in those different countries in Europe. So that, again, we see the same thing. The more species of plant there are in the flowering meadow, the bigger the hay yield. In other words, the more carbon was captured from the atmosphere. So pause. What are we learning here? What are we learning? We're learning that biodiversity is essential for Gaia's health, basically. You know, it's no longer good enough to say, oh, you know, the African savanna is nice for tourists, but it's a luxury. No, it's not. The African savanna, the rainforest, every single biome in land and ocean is an organ of our body, of our wider body. It's an organ like our liver and our lungs, you know. So Biodef found many other benefits of biodiversity, retention of nutrients, water quality, etc., etc., energy use. So biodiversity is essential for the health of Gaia, for our planet. But what are we doing to biodiversity? We're destroying it. I mean, here you can see the loss in species abundances of numbers of species, not species abundant, numbers of species from 1970 to 2016. As we can determine scientifically, it's just going down and down and down, and it's really, really alarming. So we're destroying the biodiversity of our planet, and we're destroying the climate. And we've got to sort of snap out of this madness. So how are we going to do it? Well, my approach is to join the myth and the science of Gaia together. So I would say Gaia, the real Gaia, the holistic Gaia, not just the mythological or the scientific Gaia, but the two of them together. We could say the real Gaia, the deep Gaia, is mytho-scientific. So it's a mixture of the two, a complete holistic mixture of the two. So for example, just to very close, I'll do another 5 minutes or so, then we finish. You can see that the 4 components of Gaia, the scientific components, I've put them here: atmosphere, life, rocks, water, but I've put a mandala picture, which is a picture from the mind, the deep mind of wholeness. I've put that in the center. This is a picture from C.G. Jung, from his red book. You can see that I'm trying to say something mythological here. Can you see? Here I've got the scientific words. Here I've got the mythological feeling from the myth of Gaia, from the depths. What's going on between these 4 elements, rocks, atmosphere, water, life, is very deep. It's much deeper than science can discover. And it has to do with a sense of love and a sense of inspiration and a sense of wholeness and coming home and realization that we only find in nature, that Gaia gives us. And once we find that, we can treat her well. Here is, for example, let me show you this. In alchemy, which I'm very fond of, I've been studying alchemy. There's this old figure here, you know, of a snake biting its tail. It's a mythological understanding of something very deep about nature. And we know that this same kind of snake biting its tail happens all over Gaia from the scientific point of view. Here's carbon dioxide being cycled out of volcanoes down into the ocean, being subducted deep in the ocean, under the earth, molten and returned. You see, it's like this. From the science, we know that everything is going on like this. It's all this kind of snake biting its tail situation. It's both mythological and scientific at the same time. Can you see? Mythological, scientific, mythological, scientific, mythological. And you can contemplate both together. I tell you, when I've been doing this for a few years, it's really marvelous what happens. So the Tao, of course, the Taoist had this idea. Returning is the movement of the Tao, you see. I have to say I'm a great fan of ancient Chinese culture. I've benefited so much from the I Ching and from Tao Te Ching. I'm deeply grateful to what ancient Chinese culture kept alive, which Western culture rejected, and which we now so desperately need to find. And I think ancient Chinese culture is a tremendous source of helpfulness and deep knowledge about how we need to relate to nature. So let's try and put those together, and then we'll stop. Here are the 4 scientific aspects of Gaia: atmosphere, life, rocks, and water. And here's the mythological Western Gaia. See, coming in the middle. Okay, you ready? Here we go. So let's see. I'm now putting the 8 trigrams from the I Ching in relation to those. Now, why am I doing that? Well, I think, just going back here, the self-regulation emerges because of a balanced relationship between these 4 components. If one of them gets too dominant, at the moment, life, us, we're getting too dominant, and we can break the whole system if we're not careful. That hasn't happened over geological time because it's like a moving shape that's always stayed around the average and within the space that life can tolerate. That's the mandala. But with the I Ching, we can add 4 more elements. So we can have a much fuller picture. It's not just 4, it's 8 elements that are sort of, and not only 8 elements, but opposites. For example, heaven is the opposite of earth. And so on with all the others. And so we can now put the names from the hexagrams in. And I think this is the fully mythological, scientific, mythoscientific Gaia that I've been searching for so many years. And it's really come to completion with me when I started studying the I Ching in a lot of detail. I spent the last year looking for the integration between the scientific Gaia, which we've got in the center here, and the ancient wisdom of the I Ching. I wanted to find a way of getting them, seeing if they'd like to talk to each other. And I managed to do something very interesting, which I may be able to share with you later, or I may not. Anyway, so can you see that these are opposites? Lake and mountain are opposites. Earth and heaven are opposites. Thunder and wind are opposites. And the idea I have for unifying mythological and scientific Gaia is to enter into the mythological meanings of these words. Lake is a real lake. This is what I love about the Chinese culture, where it's a real lake, but it's also the mythological energy of a lake. It's real fire, but it's also the mythological, psychological meaning of fire. And the same for all the others, you see. It's, in other words, very alchemical. And when we do this, when I do this, and I think it's a very interesting exploration to continue, we look inside ourselves as we do this exploration and see what we notice when we spend time in nature. What do we notice? And what I've started to notice, not every day, not every time, but sometimes, a tremendous feeling of the light, the livingness of Gaia comes upon me, like a sort of realization. Goodness gracious, it's not just an idea that Gaia is alive, not just an intellectual concept like it has been for me as a scientist for so many years. It's actually a lived reality. It's real. And it's like entering into another world, into a much richer world. And I think that's happening because we're actually unifying the 2 hemispheres of our brains to be scientific about it. My friend Ian McGilchrist has written about this very brilliantly. The master and his emissary, about the right hemisphere, which is intuitive, mythological, and the left hemisphere, which is rational and scientific. And they've become, particularly in Western culture, they've become separated, and we need to put them together. This is one way that, for me, has worked, of putting the 2 together. And then you have a doorway into Gaia. And you can say, like the Taoists, you know, surrender yourself humbly. You get a tremendous humility with this experience of being Gaia, I call it. Tremendous humility. You really do. You realize, my goodness, this planet is such a powerful being. And I'm in your service. I'm in your service. You know, you really want to be in service. And this is where deep ecology comes in, you see, which we're also going to explore on the course. And you love the world as your own self. then you really do. It's not just you really do. It happens. You know how to love the world as your own self, because the world is your own self, and you know it for sure. And then you can care for all things, and then you can live peacefully with your fellow humans. And if all of us did this, if all of us could find this inner center, which has a name in Chinese culture, which I can't remember. In Western psychology, it's called the self. If we could find this, the ecological self, if all of us could work for this in our own lives, we wouldn't have any ecological problems. We'd have as very few problems at all. Okay, thank you. So we have quite a bit of time for questions and things, don't we?
Yes, that's great. So then we can really hear how this has been resonating with you, what questions you have or comments. I think this is really important. We've been really trying to keep the talks in this format, that it really keeps a space for this exchange to happen. So we're having some comments, but please bring your questions. I was thinking of one.
Oh yeah.
There was one thought coming to me, Stephan. I thought maybe I can begin whilst people
you
type
start.
their
Good
questions.
idea. Yeah.
I think I often hear, and I would imagine most people here would have heard this as well, when we speak about saving the planet. That the understanding that actually we are, that the earth will be fine without us, that what we are trying to do is saving ourselves, that because the earth will be fine without us. Something doesn't sit quite well with me when I hear it, but it's very hard to argue against, I find, because it's very logical at the same time. Okay, we're just passing by, the earth will regenerate, without us. And but there's something that sounds not quite right, and I'd love to hear your thoughts.
I'm hearing your question. I just want to see this bird that's oh my God, it's a buzzard sitting on the oh, how beautiful. I haven't seen that forever. For the first time I've ever seen that here. So yeah, the point, you can answer that question with science. Sorry, just let me have one more look, because it's so beautiful. Oh my God, I wish you could see him. You can answer that question with science, because we know from the science that the earth won't be the same again without us. Imagine we keep going for another 50 years and we really wreck the planet. We get 2-3 degrees of warming, and then something wipes us out, right? I mean, I hope this doesn't happen, you understand? I'm doing a thought experiment based on the science, our scientific understanding. What will happen to the earth? Will she just recover? Will all the rainforests come back and all the coral reefs recover? No, I'm afraid it doesn't look like it. The reason is, you see, because the sun is now very, very bright. So we have to realize that the sun has been getting brighter and brighter throughout geological time. And the sun is now maybe 30% brighter. It's pumping out 30% more energy now than it did when life began 4,000, let's say 3,800 million years ago. Can you imagine that increasing sun? Now the sun is so bright that Gaia is just about managing to regulate. With all her biodiversity intact, she can just about manage to regulate the temperature for maybe another 500-600 million years. And then we come along, Westerners, sorry, I'm not anti-Western, but then we wreck the planet, and she won't be able to recover. Jim Lovelock says it's rather like shooting an old grandmother in the shoulder, or maybe not, it's too extreme, but cutting her shoulder or something. A young woman would be able to recover quite well, but an old woman, maybe not. You could get an infection there, or she could become arthritis. I don't know. So we have to think of Gaia as an old lady, a very venerable old planet, coming into her old age now, her final moment for self-realization, like a pilgrim that's finally reaching some kind of old age destination. But she needs all her biodiversity to do that. And if we destroy that, and she needs the right climate, if we destroy those, she'll be so hot. She'll be like a hot old lady pilgrim. She'll be so hot, her mind will go off the subject. She'll just try to keep cool. Her self-realization will be ruined, basically. Do you see what I mean? So it's not right to say that the earth will be all right. From a scientific point of view, it's not correct. The chances are, in science, we can never be certain of anything, right? It's probabilities we speak of. So there's a very, very high probability that she won't recover and she'll be hot forever. So, well, that brings up lots of other questions. Like, does Gaia have a purpose and things like that? I mean, we can discuss that if you want. But up to you, what you want to talk about. Yes, please. From Juan, would you like to come on live and say your question, Juan, please?
Sure.
Juan.
Hi, Stephan. Hi, this is Sharon, and hello, everybody online. Thank you
Hello.
so much for your very inspirational talk.
Oh, thank you.
I'm so emotional and
Oh, really? Thanks.
And my question is about the diagram that you shared with us in the end, where you tried to integrate your discoveries from the I Ching and the mythoscientific view of the earth that you talked about. And I was wondering why those 8 additional elements, why the number 8, and also why are the elements placed in exactly where they are placed? So I was wondering if you could talk more about your inspiration.
Yeah. Oh, thanks for that question. I mean, in science, I've spent most of my life in science. In myth, I'm just a beginner, okay? And especially in Chinese culture. So forgive my ignorance and, infantile answer, forgive me. But the thing I understand is that the 8 comes about because it's a double 4. And the 4 is the number of wholeness. It's a number that comes from deep, deep, deep in the Anima Mundi, or deep, deep from the Tao, maybe. If I may use the word, maybe I'm using it wrongly, you must correct me. The 4 is deep, deep in the structure of physical reality. And it comes from the deep mind. And then it starts to proliferate. So it makes another 4. It starts to grow. And that's why I think there are 8 trigrams in the I Ching. Yeah. And those 8 trigrams represent, they really do, if you combine them in different ways, in pairs, you get 64 hexagrams, as you know, right? And they seem to cover ancient Chinese culture discovered over thousands of years, that those 64 hexagrams really do cover just about every situation that appears in reality in some sort of way, if you can use your intuition to understand the uniqueness of each situation. So it's very deep, there's these patterns that the old Taoists discovered in nature, and they gave nature names to those energies: lake, mountain, thunder, So it's I love it. It's so connected with nature. When I go out into the forest here, I feel the I Ching's very strong. There's nature connection. It's wonderful. And so what I'm trying to do is put the science together. So I put those 4 elements from, earth, air, which are actually alchemical elements in Western alchemy. So I'm trying to, and I'm just seeing what happens. And what your question was, what happens? Well, something gets deeper. Something gets deeper. That's all I can say. I go into the forest and I feel that I've never really known what the forest is until now, until this moment. Then I realized what the forest is in a way I haven't realized before. And it's so healing. And so it brings such a joy into the heart and such a happiness, the greatest happiness. And then you see, then you want to be in service. I want to share it. I want to live my life. I want it in my life. I want it with my family, with my friends, with my work, if I can possibly manage to keep that. So it does become a path, or some kind of path into Gaia. I think it's very Gaian for me. I can't do it without, it's for Gaia and in Gaia, as part of her self-realization. I mean, it's all very grand, isn't it? What do you, anyway, we still got quite a bit of time. Do you want to say anything in response to that?
Thank you. I just wanted to say briefly what you said at the end. It's in Gaia, but it's for Gaia, but also in Gaia, because I'm studying Goethean scientific method. So what you said,
yeah.
completely. And no, thank you. I just want to say you've inspired me to want to keep learning. Or I have to admit I'm ignorant about the I Ching, even though I come from China. But that's the direction I want to go into next.
Yeah, please do. And you can read in the original. We have to have translations. You don't need a translation. Goethe was, of course, on this track. He was the last one of the last mythoscientific scientists, or mythoscientists, or whatever you want to call them. He was great, yeah. He wrote his Faust, which is tremendously deep mythology. Where are you studying Goethean science? Where are you now?
Oh, I'm in China. I'm working with Ying at Shumi, learning.
Oh, that explains it. Okay, good.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Please, somebody else. I'd love to hear your reactions. It's so nice to have these sorts of conversations.
Stephan, you just mentioned that you have to use translation for the I Ching, and someone, Florent, just asked, which translation are you using?
Oh, I've got 3 translations. I have the English, here it is, Wilhelm, which is the first one, really great one in English, Wilhelm. Can you see that? Richard Wilhelm, which Jung, the great Swiss psychologist who really brought myth back into our culture big time, C.G. Jung. He writes an amazing foreword for it. You must read that. It explains what the I Ching is. And then I've got this French version by Javery. So I'm lucky I can sort of manage to read French with a dictionary, because my first language is actually Spanish, not English. And Spanish is quite close to French. And then finally, I've got this version by my friend Shantana Sabadini. Look at this. And this is the Arnenaess I Ching. The Arnenaess I Ching. So I try to use all 3 of them. I tend to go initially with Wilhelm, and then I'll use these as well. I think that's good enough for me. But you don't need a translation. I mean, how lucky you are to have such wisdom in your own language. Yeah. Okay, please,
so
more.
We have
Anyone
a question
else?
we have a question on the I Ching, and then we have also one on how do we inspire people to respect Gaia. People seem so disconnected. How can we make this change that is needed? So, but maybe whilst we're still in the I Ching, maybe we could first have the question from Lian May. I don't know, Lian, if you want to
please come on the screen. I'd love to meet you.
I can read.
Please come on. I'd love to see you, please.
See if
Forgive me if I take one more look at the buzzard.
There you go.
Oh my goodness. It's just amazing, beautiful.
Hello, Lian.
Yes, please go on.
Hi, nice to meet you. Thank you, Stephen, for such an inspiring talk and sharing. My question is actually echoing Xuanhe's question about the I Ching, and very coincidentally, I'm creating a garden in Hong Kong based on the I Ching system, both visually and energetically. So I've been kind of studying the I Ching, but also just in the very early stages of understanding this ancient wisdom. And it's very uncommon for Western philosophers to comment about the I Ching and to integrate that into a Gaian practice. So I was very keen and very thrilled that you put it into your PowerPoint today. So my question is, I see that you referenced the Fu He's hexagram, which is more based on abstract order and
now that's interesting.
Yeah, and I wonder if you purposely did that and not reference the King Wen's I Ching hexagram based on temporal and peripheral relationship, which in a sense makes more sense in a Gaian theory.
Okay, right. Now, you see, the interesting thing is you say you're a beginner in the I Ching, but you already know a lot about those 2 orderings of the I Ching. Now, as I understand it, the ordering I used is the ordering that puts the opposites together. So isn't that the King Wen one, the one I used? It's called the earlier heaven. Am I wrong?
I don't know who, I can't comment.
Well, I may be wrong, but I mean, King Wen put the hexagrams in pairs of opposites, or, you know, mirror images, that kind of thing, didn't he? So the reason I use this version, whether it's King Wen or not, I think it is, but we can check, is because I like the opposites working together. For example, this is one I like. Fire and water are opposites, right? So fire is like the sun warming the soil, and water is the rain that waters the seed. So you see how beautiful that is. You could put that into your exhibition, you see. You could show, if you use this ordering of the hexagrams, you can show the opposites in nature and how they work to create Gaia because of the relationship between the opposites. Heaven and earth, of course, they're also opposites in that arrangement. You know, heaven is the great law, the Tao maybe, chaos, vast and dark. And the receptive, that's us, you know, we need to be receptive to that and to act according with it. So that, you know, there are four sets of opposites, mountain and lake. I won't go on, but you see what I mean? So if you put, I would suggest, I mean, I'm not telling you what to do, but if you use that arrangement as pairs of opposites in your exhibit, and you can explain how scientifically, we need opposites in order for anything to exist. There have to be a relationship of opposites, and you can put Gaia in the middle, put those four ways of, you know, life, earth, etc., rocks, water, put them in the middle and show how they too are engaged in this sort of elastic relationship, which gives birth to a healthy planet.
I see. Thank you so much for your clarification.
Good luck with I'd love to see it once you've done it. Send me, if you put some photographs, or send us some photographs. It's really nice to see what you're doing.
It's going to be a very long-term project. It's a garden in Hong Kong.
Lovely, really nice. Yeah.
But I will share. Thank you so much.
Well, stay in touch. I'd love to know how it goes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great. So we have two questions, Stephan, that I think are very related. Oh, and someone is asking about more information about the guidance. So Lian, please feel free to type in the chat so people here can know more of and keep in touch as well. So just to share these two questions, Stephan, that are related, I think. So the first is, how do we inspire?
Oh, yes. No, I'm listening. How do we inspire people? Yeah.
How do we inspire everyone else to see and respect Gaia? Seems, considering that the majority of people seem so disconnected.
Yeah.
How can we make this change? And then I'll read the next question that I think is connected. The other one also then asks, in a time where scientific materialism dominates most people's perception of reality and value systems, how could we gently prompt people who are firm believers of scientific materialism to embrace the mythological approach to knowing?
Yeah, great questions. I think the answer to both of those, well, not the answer, but one way of going is for everybody to have a Gaia place. So we can say say we have a real skeptic. You say, look, okay, I understand you can't get a Gaia thing, and you can't feel the earth is a living being, and so why not just find a place in nature near your house or in your garden where you can go again and again and again. You sort of make a commitment to this place. It's a place you like in nature, not far from your house. It could even be a window box, you know. If you're living in Hong Kong in a block of flats at the top, you have a lot of window boxes with lovely tropical plants. And what you do is every day, if you can, you commit to spend time with that place. And go with an open mind, you know. You can take a notebook, sketch something to sketch, or take some water so you're comfortable. And if you can, spend the first time 15 minutes and just gradually increase it. And all you're doing is just being there. You're looking, you're seeing, you're watching your thoughts. But you're waiting to see if something can be shown to you as well. You have an attitude of waiting for something to be shown. You know it can be, in the end, something will be shown if you spend long enough there. And what will be shown is what you need to understand or to know that Gaia is alive. What you'll be shown is what I call, well, you'll be Gaia'd. Gaia will show you, I mean, it sounds a bit strange, but you'll understand, you'll have a sense of how the earth really is alive. It'll just change your perspective. It's like falling in love with someone, you know. If you really fall in love with someone, I mean, you really see their wonderful qualities, you know, and you love them for those qualities. It's the same, you feel that with the earth. Very similar, not quite the same, because she's also our mother, you see. So it's much deeper relationship. She's actually because she gave birth to us all. These sorts of insights can come to you if you spend long enough in your Gaia play. Come to any of us, because we're all naturally Gaians. We all have this knowledge from birth. It's built into us by Gaia, and it's been bashed out of us by our culture. So the best way back into it is, as long as we're reasonably healthy psychologically, you know, if we've got real, but even then, nature is always a great healer. So that's it. I call it Gaia place. I don't like sit spot very much, or Gaia spot, because it's a place where you can eventually start to feel the entire planet as a living being. You can get a sense of it, of the planet as one great organism. It comes upon you, the vastness, you know, of the planet. Where I am way to the north, you know, to Norway and to the Arctic Circle and the ice, and then to the west, the Americas, etc. I suddenly start to get a feeling for the vastness of this planetary organism. And it's a very wonderful feeling. It gives you a sense of tremendous meaning and purpose. And all this can happen in your Gaia place. But you have to go with an openness. I think eventually, even the most skeptical person would be worn down by Gaia. It might take decades or several lifetimes to do it. So I think the answer to both those questions, Juliana, or not the answer, but an important component of a solution to that problem, how to get people engaged again, is not just to walk in nature, but it's to have a relationship, to be in one place, a Gaia place, to have 1 or 2 or 3 places where you can go and be present until you feel the tree, like Shakespeare said, like Satish quoted this in his talk, Shakespeare, until you realize, like the Duke in As You Like It, tongues in trees, sermons in stones, books in the running brooks, and good in everything. Yeah, I mean, you can't get better than that. You can't, that's it. That's the best expression of it I've ever read in Western language. And it comes from being in your Gaia place. So I think that's very important. And at the same time, you can, once you start to feel something, you know, you'll want to start studying and reading and learning and coming on courses and finding out more of how can I cultivate this? You want to cultivate it. It's so satisfying, so profound. It starts changing your life. You know, you live more simply. Well, anyway, you know the rest of it. It's a road into deep ecology, basically, Gaia place, and into real happiness and benefit for all. I think so. Anyway, please, some more questions or more comments. We've still got, quite a bit of time. We've got we've got about 25 minutes or so.
Yes, we haven't had any question on the chat, but also to invite, I'll be so taking a risk here to pronouncing names, but yeah, the people with the questions before, if you want to comment on what Stephan has shared, and also other people, please, just come on,
even if you're skeptical or you have some problems or
that's always, also very, very helpful.
It's very interesting, you know, it's all very interesting. It all helps. I hope all of us to move in this direction. So please.
Siobhan, I hope I'm pronouncing it close to right.
Siobhan,
I don't know if you want to come online, Siobhan, but I'm just gonna read for now. Humans are lost in the world of internal words and generally don't seem to care enough to connect with her. Lost in ego. So I don't know how to inspire the lost ones to even try to look outside of that.
I know. Yeah, it's very difficult. Do you want to come on? It'd be nice to see you.
Hello.
Are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can't see you. But anyway, it's all right.
Okay. My video is on.
Oh, really? Okay. No, and it doesn't matter. Yeah, I see. So just repeat your question so I can hear you say.
I find it, I know so many people who have zero connection to the planet. And I don't know how I can even get them to look at it. Everyone seems to be lost within their own internal words, and you're lost on your screens, and you're lost on the constant onslaught of social pressure that nobody even notices that there is a planet around them. And I feel her deeply, and it breaks my heart to see everyone so disconnected. And I don't know how to inspire, because it's the majority of our world that needs to know she's here.
Right. You know, I think you work on yourself. When you're in that situation, just focus on your own understanding. Focus on cultivating it for yourself. And that involves finding community, like, you know, we have here. I mean, Kadoorie is creating, and Schumacher, these places around the world where we can really explore these things in a sort of rigorous way and very seriously with each other. So I think make use of the community. You're part of it. We're together in it now, this community of around the world of people who are aware of these sorts of things. So then if you're in a situation like that, be with the community online if necessary, like we are now. I mean, I'm finding it very nourishing for me, you know, as well. And then we carry on with our work, deepening it for ourselves however we can. I would say with Gaia Place, very important. And then, well, we behave ethically, you know, as a result. We try to treat people well in our world as best as we can. It's not easy sometimes. So that's what I would do. Just focus on one's own development and contact with the community. And in that sort of way, we will have some kind of influence. I'm quite sure of it. Every person who moves in this direction has an influence. Of course, the influences in the opposite direction are massive today. But so what? We have even more reason to cultivate this opposite. You see, it's like the I Ching. We've got too much fire and not enough water. You could look at it like that. Our culture is literally putting the planet on fire.
I do Chinese medicine, and so the yin yang is a large part of how I see the earth, and I see us as extremely over yang. And I feel that because our species is so masculine, I think that the masculine aspect has over yanged us, so we've over yanged the planet, and that it's the building of the yin and the feminine aspect that needs to rebalance.
Yeah, and the yin for me as a man, you know, it's soulfulness. It's very feminine for a man. I don't know, I can't speak for women, but it's very much, you know, Mother Gaia for me is very much part of that yin. So I think you could say it's being Gaia could be there are various kinds, but there's certainly a yin kind where it's, you know, you do feel her as a kind of mother. It's lovely realization. So anyway, my answer would be just let's work on oneself in community.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
We have another question from Zoe Fa. So how do we maintain a holistic approach to respond to the Gaia's crisis in a way that is manageable and not overwhelming? So not reductionist, that is just about climate change or biodiversity, environment, habitat loss. How do we go beyond? But in a way that is also not overwhelming. So
I see. That's interesting. Well, I don't know, but maybe that's the mythological dimension, where that feeling for the mythological aspect of things is to do with a sense of purpose, that the whole whole of the story on the earth, the whole evolutionary story is about something, you know, it's something inherently really, really good that the earth is moving towards. You could say some kind of Gaia self-realization. The planet needs to move into a sort of self-realization, and our consciousness of her, our own Gaian consciousness of her, is part of that. She needs us to do that. She can't find that wholeness without us. I think, you know, if we have that feeling, then that's what will save us, I think. But have I answered your question? Not exactly. So come back to me. Also, come on the screen if you can. It'd be nice to see you.
Thank you, Stephan.
I can't see. Go on. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just
Oh, there you are.
often,
Go on.
often there's this, just a lot of people are solely focusing on, for example, climate change, or just on, and kind of saying everything else doesn't matter, because if the earth warms up to a certain degree, then everything is done. You know, it gets too hot, there isn't it, you know, it's doomed.
Right.
We're all doomed.
Okay.
So
yeah.
But yeah, it's very easy to get into that reductionistic mindset and forget.
Right.
Well, it does matter to, you know, regenerate the local water systems or the local biodiversity that we live on, and take care of the land. So how do we approach?
Oh, you tell that it's very easy. You just, sorry, jump like
I'm done.
that. But you say to them,
and one more thing is
okay.
I think you mentioned about the meaning of Gaia, and you briefly talked about her self-realization. I'd love to hear more about that too. Thank you.
Okay, hang on a minute. So what I would say to them is, we can't achieve the climate goals that we're after without biodiversity. It's very simple. Just use the science, you see. Use the science with those sorts of folks. It's great science. We know that now. It's well accepted that biodiversity, I mean, I can tell you the ways I know, but there are many ways in which biodiversity helps the climate. For example, plants take carbon out of the atmosphere through photosynthesis, and some of that carbon gets into the roots and stays in the soil for millennia. You know, so the soil is a great store of carbon from the atmosphere. And the soil is only maintained by the entire web of life on the forest. So if you cut down the forest, you're destroying a whole web of life that actually sucks CO2 out of the atmosphere, and the soil that's left releases carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. What a disaster. You don't want to do that. That's going to make us miss the climate goals by miles. That's how I would say it to them. Does that help?
Yes, thank you. And I think with biodiversity, then it does link into habitat.
Exactly.
It's much more complex, yeah.
And then you see, all right, to go to your next question. Yeah, habitat is complex, and we don't want to disturb it because it gives us climate services. I hate to use that phrase, climate services. But if you're with someone who can only understand that language to begin with, just use it, I would. And then let's imagine you have someone like that, and then they say, oh yeah, I see what you mean. And they go for a walk in the woods another day. Because they're concerned about the climate. So, you know, they're not a totally hopeless case. And then suddenly they realize something about what you mean, about biodiversity helping the climate. They actually start to feel the presence of the biodiversity. And then you see they're being contacted by, you could say, they're making contact psychologically with a deeper layer of the psyche where the purpose can be known. Can't be known, but you sort of get a sense, one gets a sense of it, and one aligns oneself with it. It's a mystery. I mean, Jung was very good at exploring this, I must say. He really was very good. But it's very much connected with Taoism as well. The Taoist masters felt it too. And that person, you've brought that person there by linking the science, by using the science to answer their question. And it's the science of biodiversity that you're bringing there. In the science of biodiversity, there is hidden, like in a Trojan horse, you know, the story of the Trojan horse, Gaia is hidden there within biodiversity. Once you start considering biodiversity, you can't escape Gaia. especially in relation to climate. So that person could be Gaia'd, the one that started off just caring about, the CO2 and nothing else. They can be Gaia'd through the science. Anyway, sorry, I'm taking too long on that. I hope that helps anyway.
Yeah, thank you. And it seems like in the most of the conventional conversations around climate change, biodiversity isn't in the center of it.
No, you see that sort of feeling of, I don't know how to put it, made crudely, that sense of love, recognition is not at the center because it hasn't become conscious. Once it's conscious, then you can live your whole life by that once it's conscious. But it comes in, and with me, it comes in and out of consciousness. So it's not an easy thing to be conscious of all the time, the livingness of the earth, at least not for me, and maybe not for many Westerners. But just now and again is enough to keep you going.
So this links, Stephan, to a comment by Mark Savelli. He's saying how saving biodiversity or the biosphere seems more actionable and less abstract than saving the climate. But unfortunately, it is the later, is saving the climate that seems to be the call to action that is getting most attention.
Good. Then we go, that's thank you, a great observation. Then we go with that cultural move. We go with it. Don't resist it. Don't say, oh, no, not just climate, not just climate. No, what we have to say is, yeah, climate. And biodiversity has a huge role to play in determining the climate. Look, here's the data, here's the data. That's how you do it, by encouraging that move to focus on the climate, but we're adding biodiversity into the mix. And because it's science, the people who are concerned about climate will adopt it very easily. I think they will. And that's already a move towards Gaia, because you see, now you're putting life into the picture, into the worldview of those people, which is just mostly CO2 and climate. You're making them moving them culture more towards Gaia, because now the biodiversity is interacting with the climate, and they realize that. You see, so that's an important move to support those climate people by giving them the biodiversity information and the biodiversity science. Okay, I don't know if that makes any sense, or if it helps. I hope it does. Okay, and keep going.
Yes, so I think we're coming to our last, we have another, so 2 last questions. We're approaching our time. Okay. So there's one by Liang, sorry if I pronounce it, poor pronunciation.
Yes, I can see
but
you're smiling.
She had asked before, and so she's studying the I Ching, and she asked before, so maybe if you would like to come again and ask. And then we have one from Matthew about yoga and practices which help bring your chemistry with the Gaia experience.
And apparently Sarah B, you see that message?
Oh, Sarah B.
Julian, you see the message there?
Okay, yes. I missed this one.
Yeah.
Okay, so Sarah, do you want to come online, and maybe we can have the questions, and then Stephan makes a final comment. So there's one from Matthew about yoga and how you can bring your chemistry with the Gaia experience, as you explained. And then we have one very focused on the I Ching that we can finish with, and we could hear Sarah B.
Okay, right here.
So, Sarah,
so should we do we do yoga first, shall we?
Yeah.
Okay, so for Matthew. Well, I don't know about yoga, but what I found helpful sometimes is Qigong. So I think yoga would be the same. Qigong I found very helpful. A friend of mine taught me some very simple Qigong. And it's very, very, very good for connecting with Gaia. Because what you're doing is you're moving your body, and you're bringing the earth, this energy of the earth, through your body, and bringing it up and giving it to the universe, to the heavens. And then you're bringing the energy of the heavens back down into your body, and through your body into the earth. So it's through you, the heaven and earth meet. And you sort of experience that meeting, and when it happens. It's tremendously Gaian, that. It's really powerful for me. I'm sure yoga's the same, but I don't have any, I'm too stiff to do yoga, you see. That's my problem. I've tried, and I'm always the one in the class who can't bend their leg like this, or, you know, so I always felt very silly in a yoga class because I'm so stiff. But Qigong suits me just right. But the point is, some kind of body movement like that seems to be really helpful. Really, really helpful. It really does. The body needs to be involved. That's a very important point. I should do my Qigong much more than I do in my Gaia place, which I'll do that when we finish. I'll go to my Gaia place and do my Qigong. That's wonderful, yeah. Thank you. You see, the body is very important. So the next question was about the I Ching. Yes. So can we have the I Ching question?
Okay. So
Oh,
I was
sorry.
just going to suggest if Sarah could say, could ask her question, and then maybe we can finish with both.
Yeah. Hello. I can't hear you very well. Oh, there you are. I can see you.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you well enough.
It's a bit
low.
Okay.
It's all right. Just keep going. We'll do what we can.
My original questions were answered, which is fantastic. And I just wanted to say, unlike Siobhan, everybody I know of my age or a similar age has a subconscious or a conscious belief in the intelligence of nature, but we're also that group of people that has almost given up. And I wasn't worried about that because the question of something you said that was absolutely new to me. The people that I talk to about ecological issues and the state of mankind and the state of the planet, we did believe that when we become extinct, when humans become extinct, that the earth would continue.
No.
Without us, we are the same. So this is a revelation to me. So can you give me, and I'm sorry it's such a beginner's basic question.
No, that's no problem at all.
Example of, if you take humans away, why would the planet not readjust to just very ways back up, and animal life would re-flourish and insect life would flourish?
I see. Okay. You need to I need to explain some systems thinking to you.
Okay.
So basically, if you change a system a little bit, so you disturb it a bit, nothing much happens, right? But the changes, if the disturbance is continuous, there is a disturbance that gradually accumulates, gradually accumulates. Let's say taking out species out of an ecosystem. You go in, you take the Amazon rainforest, you start logging it and taking out certain species because you like the timber, right? And you do it very carefully, but you keep doing it. Once that species is gone, you take another one that's almost as good, and you just keep going like that. And for a long time, nothing much happens, you know? But then all of a sudden, you can get a sudden catastrophic drop where the whole Amazon flips into a savanna mode. Now, I don't know if you experienced tropical savanna. I did some ecology in Venezuela in tropical savanna. It's nothing like a rainforest. It's mostly grass with scattered trees. And once it's in that state, you can't push the whole system back up into the rainforest. The rainforest is gone. It's gone. Never come back. Unless, well, not, you can say never, but it's so unlikely now with a bright sun, you know, and with the damage we've done, that this rainforest in the Amazon will ever be a rainforest again. And the loss of the tragic loss of that beautiful evolved biodiversity, and not only that, but the cooling service the whole Amazon does for the planet, gone forever. And that's why the planet will go hot. One of the reasons, because you lose the Amazon. The Amazon makes clouds above herself, which cool the planet. Terribly important for the planet.
And maybe I should ask it the other way around. What is the positive that humankind gives to Gaia?
Consciousness, I think. Love. Love of Gaia is the best we can give her, to love her, just to be with her and adore and realize she's just amazing. You know, the plant, to have for me as a scientist, you know, just to see a tree and how the evolutionary journey that it's taken to make that tree, not just the tree, but the whole of life, of the whole planet, 4,600 million years. That's another thing you could do, actually. You could do a deep time walk. We're going to do one on the course, aren't we, Juliana, I think? This is you can look it up, Deep Time Walk app. Get your friends to do that. It's a way of connecting with the deep history of the earth, with Gaia, you know. Anyway, sorry, I've rambled around your question. But you see, that changes everything, doesn't it? Because it means now we have to try to do what we can to prevent that from happening.
So is it our job as humans just to prevent damage and destruction to the other elements of the planet, or do we actually, being here ourselves, produce something positive just by being?
Yeah, we produce something positive, which is then required to do your first point, to actually heal the situation. Unless we cultivate that Gaian knowledge in ourselves, we can't heal the situation properly.
So human part is our intelligence in order to stop other damage and to repair as much as we can what we've already done.
That's it. Yeah,
okay.
And to do that, we need a Gaian consciousness to do that. We need to have something like, I mean, I'm not saying everyone should have everyone's Gaian consciousness is different. It's just a little drop of it is enough. It doesn't have to be the full-blown thing. Just a little drop that, you know, we're part of a living planet that matters. It matters to the universe. It matters to the primordial chaos, to the Tao. It matters. And so we have to do what we can in our own life. Well, we know that it matters because we're cultivating that openness in ourselves through Qigong, yoga, whatever we're doing, through mythological work. With the myth side of ourselves, the poetic side, the side that feels beauty, that feels love in a flower, that recognizes that, you know, the marvel of a thunderstorm or something. That part of us, we cultivate that, really cultivate it.
It's for us, it's conscious, it's intelligent, and it's taking the right action. It's not like just being here causes some accidental benefit to the ecosystem. For us, it's using this. Okay.
That's right. It's cultivating that side of ourselves, a poetic side, you could say. I like to call it mythological. We could say poetic. So, but you know, tell your friends that the Earth won't be like. It won't be the same if we disappear. It does matter that we're here. For Gaia, it matters. This whole business of 4,600 million years of evolution on a planet is not. It can't be for nothing. I mean, it's such a rare situation. We haven't found anything else like it in other solar systems. We know several thousand other planets in other solar systems now. None of them are anywhere near like this one.
Is there any way of measuring, or can you make a guesstimate of when Gaia was at her peak, when the planet was at its happiest and healthiest? Is it really a simple industrialization? Or is it much longer back when humans were living in a different way and a different lifestyle?
I think it was, all right, I'm going to be over romantic.
I'm really sorry that we are running out of time. And
we've got to stop.
Feels like it fews like we are starting the course, deepening our connection to nature.
That's it. Yeah. You have to come on the course, Sarah. Sorry to be, you know, advertising.
Details.
There are details, yeah. I mean,
yes, so thank you so much, Sarah. I think this has been so stimulating, and I'm aware we have a last question on the
yes, I'm happy to go over
so
a little bit of time.
Very briefly, so then we can wrap it back to the I Ching.
Okay, good idea. Yeah, go on. Hi.
So much, Stephan. It's been such a marvelous talk. And my name is Liang Liang. I'm also based at Schumacher College in China. So to wrap this. Yeah, great. And it's simply, I was just reflecting upon how the I Ching seems to, it could be understood in a way as presenting an fractalized system that describes the functional balance of the universe. And at each level of the fractal system, the constituent elements together comprise the Tao. And I was wondering if the mytho-scientific theory of Gaia also has a schema to describe the ways in which the same cosmic, or if you will, transcendental patterns recur at progressively diminished scales.
Wow, gosh. No, that's work to be done. Yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah, that's work to be done. I see what you're saying. Fractal, yeah. It's fractal. No, it's there at every single scale. Of course it is. At the you have science in your background?
No, my background, my training is in anthropology.
Oh, right, okay. Well, you know, atoms, we're all familiar with atoms and molecules. It's going on at the levels of atoms and molecules, proteins, you know, it's going on at every single level. Those processes are happening at every single level. And it's fractal, yeah. But what that means, I don't know. I mean, if you think of the DNA, you know, how you'd have to work with it, I suppose, with imagination and meditation, you have to work to enter that domain with these principles.
It just seems that with your final quite powerful diagram, I was under the impression that you were pointing towards possible parallels within these two, if we will, kind of dynamic and expansive systems of representing.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely trying to do that. So the dynamic is which, and the other one is which? The dynamic is the I Ching?
Well,
or they both have each. They both have each.
My impression, just from following this very wonderful lectures, that both seem to be dynamic systems.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you see, this is something we have to discuss, but we haven't got time to do it now.
Well, hopefully another.
We may have to do a course on it then with Kadoorie. If we have enough, just a few people to explore, it'd be fascinating, wouldn't it? Goodness gracious. Anyway, thank you for that. That's really good.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you all. I'm really sorry we went a little bit over the time, but it really felt like there was such a rich exchange in the room in our coming together. And so deep thank you to Stephan for bringing his inspiration in such a humble way, as it has been said here before. And also everyone should really engage in so fully. I think it really, it makes a difference. Like we can feel the presence when people are here present, bringing themselves and with deep listening. And so this was really alive here this evening. So thank you so much. And we are going to have a slide, like an image at the end with 2 QR codes. So one with that you can scan, and there's information, directs you to kadooriefarm's website, where you can check more information about Stephan's course starting on the 21st of June. It's a 2-week online course where we'll be really taking what we've explored here, like taking it further with a mix of guided practices to do at home, guided practices to do outside, content, knowledge, shared insight like we had today, the sense of learning together that we tasted today. So all of this will be in this course. So please do have a look, share with your friends as well that you think might be interested. We really appreciate that. And you'll receive a questionnaire after the talk very shortly. And this really helps us to keep improving and learning from how we're doing the talks, and also other names that you would like to see in this space to continue learning. Thank you all for coming, and for those who could make a donation to the conservation work at the farm. And we also hope to see you again at our next talk with Rob Hopkins, who is the founder of a movement called Transition Towns, who's really bringing this question of how can we respond to climate change, like it has come up here. How can we respond to climate change as community, and really bring imagination and community responses to really be looking at this, engaging with these challenges through community. And so I really encourage you to join us. I hope to see you next time. It'll also be the QR codes on the screen for you to apply for the talk. Thank you so much. Stephan, do you want to say any last words, or the last words will be?
I know, I'd like to say a few last words and play some music, if that's all right. Well, I just want to say thank you very much for a fantastic conversation. Thank you, everybody. Remember Gaia Place. Find a Gaia Place. And just ferment and distill. Okay. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. See you next time.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Bye-bye.
So much. Bye-bye.